So, how does a leader get to a point of absolute control? Well, today we are diving deep into the strategic playbook of one of history's true masters of power, Mao Zedong. And we're going to focus on the one brutal but incredibly effective tool he used to forge an entire nation in his own image, the Rectification campaign. First things first, what is a rectification campaign? The name itself sounds almost bureaucratic, doesn't it? But trust me, it was anything but. This was the Chinese Communist Party's signature weapon for ideological warfare. It was this relentless, top-down drive to literally correct how people thought, and they used everything in the book to do it. Intense study sessions, public criticism, humiliation, all to achieve one single-minded goal: absolute ideological unity and total party control. So for this explainer, we're going to break it all down into a four-part playbook. We're going to look at three distinct steps Mao took to just systematically wipe out any threat to his power. And then, at the end, we're going to score the whole strategy and see just how brutally effective it really was. Okay, let's jump right into the playbook. Step one, and you could argue this is the most foundational step of all. Before you can even dream of controlling a country, you have to have an iron grip on your own party. And this is exactly where it all started, back in the Yan'an Rectification movement. And just look at these methods. This wasn't just about winning a debate, no. This was full-on psychological engineering. We're talking about really intense, systematic tactics, coerced confessions, grueling public self-criticism sessions, all of it designed to just break a person down and literally remold how they think. The main goal was total conformity, but it had this very, very convenient side effect. It was the perfect excuse to purge any political rivals, like Wang Ming, who stood in Mao's way. And the results? They were devastatingly effective. Politically, Mao's rivals were gone. His leadership was cemented. Ideologically, his personal philosophy became the one and only party orthodoxy. And administratively, he now had this incredibly disciplined base of loyal followers. From Mao's point of view, this was a home run. He didn't just win a power struggle. He had successfully hardwired a culture of coercion and fear right into the party's DNA. It was a system he would use over and over and over again. Okay, so the party is now firmly under his control. What's next? Well, Mao turns his attention to his next target, society itself. In step two, he takes the exact playbook he perfected inside the party and unleashes it on the general public. Now, to conquer society, Mao didn't just attack on one front. He launched a three-pronged assault. First step, you had the thought reform campaign, which was aimed squarely at silencing intellectuals. Then came the 3 anti-campaign to terrify the government bureaucracy into submission. And finally, the 5 anti-campaign, which was designed to completely dismantle the private business community. It was this incredibly strategic takedown of every single independent pillar of society. And the results were, well, a total societal revolution. Independent thought was completely stamped out as universities and culture all fell under state control. The bureaucracy was scared into total obedience, and the entire engine of private business was basically seized by the state. In just a couple of years, Mao had fundamentally re-engineered Chinese society, getting rid of any potential challenge to the party's power. So the party is unified, the public is under control. What's left? The enemy within. Step 3 of this playbook is all about turning that weapon of rectification inward to root out and destroy any lingering dissent from inside the system itself. This internal purge was carried out through 2 absolutely brutal campaigns. The Sufan campaign was basically a massive witch hunt inside the party itself, digging up tens of thousands of supposed counter-revolutionaries. But that was just the warm-up act for the really infamous one, the anti-rightist campaign. This was a true masterstroke of political entrapment, designed to silence anyone, anywhere, who still dared to speak out. And right here is where you see the sheer Machiavellian brilliance of Mao's strategy. It was a classic bait and switch. First, he kicks off the 100 Flowers movement, and he invites people to speak their minds. "Help us get better," he basically said. "Let 100 flowers bloom." But as soon as the critics actually showed themselves, bam, the trap was sprung. The anti-rightist campaign came down like a ton of bricks, and those same flowers were suddenly branded as toxic weeds, rightists, and they were systematically destroyed. It was a masterclass in political cruelty. The human cost of this one trap was just staggering. We're talking about at least 500,000 people. Just let that number sink in for a second. 500,000 people were caught, they were publicly shamed, thrown into prison, or sent off to brutal labor camps. The effect was chilling. An entire generation of China's most brilliant minds was silenced, creating a huge vacuum of expertise and an atmosphere of absolute paralyzing terror. Okay, so let's take a step back and actually score this playbook. If we just strip away the morality for a moment and look at it purely as a strategy for grabbing and holding on to power, how successful was it really? The scorecard is just chillingly clear. Each one of these campaigns was a purpose-built tool. For securing his own personal power, the Yan'an and the anti-rightist campaigns were his sharpest weapons. For bringing all of society to heel, the campaigns against the intellectuals and businesses were brutally effective. And to make sure the state itself was loyal, well, the Sufan campaign purged the bureaucracy. This was a multi-front war where every single move had a specific, calculated outcome. But this is where the big paradox comes in. The playbook was a spectacular success for Mao personally, but it was an absolute catastrophe for China. So on one side of the scale, you've got total ideological unity and consolidated control. Mao got exactly what he wanted. But the cost on the other side of that scale was just crippling. The country was stripped of its experts, its government was left weak and damaged, and the culture of fear it created paved the way for future policy disasters on an almost unimaginable scale, like the Great Leap Forward. And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. This is the central contradiction of the entire playbook. The methods were, without a doubt, highly effective for seizing power and holding on to it. But those exact same methods were like poison for good governance. They completely gutted the country of the very expertise and critical thinking it needed to actually function and prosper. Which leaves us with this final question, one that really echoes throughout history. Mao's playbook is a chilling blueprint for how to achieve absolute unity. But it forces us to ask, what is the true cost of that unity when it's built not on shared values, but on shared fear? What happens to a nation when the price of total control is the truth itself,